Thank you so much for staying with us here on the SportsMax Zone. We continue talking football. Paris Saint-Germain are in a precarious situation as they try to figure out how to deal with Kylian Mbappe's disclosure that he will not trigger a clause to extend his contract by 1 year to 2025. Mbappe's current deal expires in June 2024, and with PSG unwilling to risk letting him go for free, he could be sold this summer. This is how Mbappe addressed the matter. For a player like me, the goal is to win everything, and we knew that at PSG there were shortcomings that sooner or later we were going to end up paying for. I didn't say I wanted to be sold to Real Madrid or want to leave, but only that I won't activate the option on the extra year. With PSG, there has never been any talk of a renewal. If Mbappe decides to see out the remaining year of his PSG deal, he will be free to sign a pre-contract agreement with a new club from January 2024. Well, our Latin America football correspondent, Juan Arango, joins us. Good afternoon, Juan. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Mariah? How are you? Yeah, quite the predicament the PSG find themselves in. But of course, it was a domino effect of everything else that is coming to fruition over the last couple of weeks. It's pretty much a three-sided story when it comes to it. We're hearing PSG, we're hearing Mbappe, and of course, Real Madrid lurking in the shadows as they know that they're the team that most likely Mbappe wants to go to, or they want him to come, especially after the signing of Jude Bellingham.
Yes, and what surprised me is the fact that there's this letter that Kylian Mbappe, of course, has put out that has gotten around that he will not activate that clause. Mm-hmm. And for me, the timing is something that has confused me. Why now? Does it have something to do with the Big Ben's leaving? Is it that Kylian Mbappe is trying to make a statement so that Real Madrid gets him for less? It doesn't add up to me. And the key question I'm asking you is the timing.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? Let's go back to the month of, during the World Cup, because we saw a PSG side that most likely was going to keep their big three together. You saw a team that was a very top-heavy team. And when it came time to ask a question, when Leo Messi comes out and says, okay, so what's the project going forward? No answer. There's no, okay, where are we going? What's the direction that the team's heading into? Looks like Kylian Mbappe asked the same question and basically got the same no answer at this point. Of course, he's going to commit to his contract. It's a very hefty contract, I may say, and any team that decides to commit to said contract ends up spending quite a significant amount of money. Let's not kid ourselves, and PSG don't want to let another player go for free. We've seen that happen way too many times over in Paris, and that is what there's a great investment that they've made in this player. There's a great deal of resources that they've put into making him their number one guy, the face of the club. And now him saying this, it kind of ends up being a slap in the face to them. And they feel it right now, and they're feeling it really hard.
Yes, and for the last season at PSG, he had 43 games, 41 goals. We know his contribution. That is not in question. My question to you, though, is now that letter has come out, he has said, those things are not very true. He is happy at PSG. He wants to stay the other year. What does he benefit from saying that, if anything?
He's basically saying that he's committed to the cause at least until his contract ends, until the actual contract ends. Now, the option ends up being a bit of a semantic in terms of if he does renew. Keep in mind the last negotiation, it basically went until the last hour. Some were even saying that he was already going to Real Madrid, which ended up not being the case. And the agreement ended up being made because his team does change its mind. He will change his mind. We don't know which direction PSG are going to be. And now keep in mind, there's one more factor that barely anyone talks about. This would be the first time in his career, even going back to his days at Monaco, that he is the man and the only man for the team that he's playing for. Even the French national team, he is not the number one, or he isn't the only option for the French national team. This time for PSG, he is the only option with the departure of Messi, and of course with the eventual departure of Neymar. We'll see how that drama ends up coming out, and that's where you start to see, well, do I want to be at a club where things kind of are wandering around and there's no true direction? Or should I start looking at greener pastures elsewhere? That's kind of the big question. Say, hey, you know what? I will be available soon, guys. So let's keep in touch. Let's not close our options in the long term.
Yeah, I guess when you really look at it, this is a win-win for Kylian Mbappe. He could leave this summer if PSG decide that, listen, we will not take the risk of you leaving for free next year. Of course, if he doesn't and he stays on until next season, he is still in an extremely powerful position, because he then gets to decide, one, do I stay with PSG? And if I stay with PSG, well, club, these are the things I will need to stay here. If I'm not getting the answers that I want, then I will look elsewhere. And so Kylian Mbappe somehow has managed to put himself in a tremendously powerful position. The question I will ask, though, how often does this happen where a club, especially at the level of PSG, finds themselves on the back foot in a situation like this, especially when you're talking about a 24-year-old superstar? We're not talking about a 28, 29-year-old who, when you signed them 5 years ago, you were not sure that they would still be good at this stage. How did PSG end up here?
Well, you just said the last phrase, but I'm going to have to tweak it a little bit. You're not sure if your team's going to be good going forward. I'm not sure if PSG is going to be any good going forward. They've already lost a lot of their attacking options. They really don't have a foot to stand on. They're making they're putting themselves in a position where, well, we're going to sell you. And he's like, hey, I'm committed to my contract. Now, if they end up selling him, let's say hypothetically, who ends up looking bad? Him? No, he was committed. They ended up shipping him out because they wanted to get money off of him. Now, when you look at it from that perspective, you also end up seeing a player that, yeah, he's also saying, and kind of wink, wink, hey, by the way, I might be available soon. Let's not close all of our doors just in case. But as far as he's concerned, he's looking great from a PR standpoint, and PSG, once again, just looking absolutely horrid in every aspect of the word.
Yeah, let me ask it this way. Where has the PSG project gone wrong? How did it go so wrong?
Do you have time? I mean, we can keep going until tomorrow.
Yeah, we have time.
I mean, look,
Not till tomorrow.
the way it's been managed, the way that thinking that throwing money at problems was going to solve things, thinking that, well, the way to keep players happy is through money, not protecting their players. Look, let's be completely and utterly honest with you. If PSG would have protected Leo Messi, would he still be there? I don't know, but there's a better possibility. The odds would have been better. They ended up putting themselves in a bad situation. Messi ends up looking, well, I'm sorry, my bad. I'll come back from Saudi Arabia, no big deal. And everything else that occurred. Neymar. And let's not even talk about Messi and Neymar. Let's go back to Edinson Cavani, the way he was kicked out of the team, the way Zlatan Ibrahimovic was removed from the team, the way other players have been shuttled off and taken into other directions, and how players have come in, and how even Mbappe was put in a situation where he was put in this golden cage where he was the ultimate savior of the club, but then they started bringing in other players that really didn't fit into what was being looked at, the coaches that have been turned around back in, year after year, season after season, the philosophy that was never there. Can I keep going?
Yeah, and I guess one more quickly, because Kylian Mbappe spoke about shortcomings on the part of the club. And you suspect, and he would have been able to see those from a year or two ago, and it is because of those shortcomings why he would have pushed for a contract like the one he now has that is leaving PSG in this position.
Yeah, that is very true. But he's starting to see how other players have been treated, how other players have been left unprotected. I mean, he saw it firsthand. He came out the other day, I think it was in L'Equipe, and says that it's a shame how Paris, how the media, how the entire I guess, environment in Paris ended up treating Messi and how they pretty much disrespected him. And he's not just saying it because he wants to give lip service to Messi. He's also saying it because, hey, you know what? If it happened to me, it very could well happen to me, because next year I am the center of attention. I am going to be under the microscope all by myself, and there's not going to be a scapegoat around to be able to share the blame.
Right, and when he was talking about Messi, he described him as potentially the best player in the history of football. And he says it's never a good news when a player like Messi leaves a club. And I think just looking on as a young football player, looking on at how the events with Messi transpired, even a young Kylian Mbappé is probably saying, if they could do that to Messi, then what can they do to me?
Exactly. And PSG, this is how PSG looks like a little tiny, classless, worthless club right now. And there's no amount of money that, that the owners, the people that run this club, that they can bring in, that they can pump into this club will make them look from an image standpoint from here on out. Their image is totally ruined from an international standpoint. They've looked like a laughingstock. They had arguably the greatest player in history in their ranks, and yet they didn't know how to use him. They didn't know how to promote him. It was, I think I spoke to a couple of journalists that were there in Paris in January, February. They went into the PSG store. There were no Neymar, there were no Messi paraphernalia to be sold in that store. Yeah, that tells you a great deal about how things are being handled, just from a marketing standpoint. Forget it from an institutional and even an individual level.
Yeah, one outside of Real Madrid, is there another club at this point that you say would fit Kylian Mbappé?
Fit from a tactical standpoint or fit from a financial standpoint?
Both. Well, I guess you would have to start with the financial standpoint, because if you can't afford him, nothing will happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the first. You're right. It's the first one. I guess you start looking at Real Madrid. You start looking at, I don't know, maybe, I'm talking about financial. I'm not talking about tactically now.
Yeah.
Maybe Manchester United, they need something to kind of, compete with City after the season they've had. Newcastle, I guess. You start looking at those types of clubs. And of course, even United looking at the possible takeover that might be going on there. So that might be another reason for them to look at him in that particular light. But the list is very short. Especially in European football, worldwide football, there's very few teams that are going to be able to cough up the money to get a Kylian Mbappé at this point of the game.
Tactically, would he fit at Manchester United?
I think he fit in pretty much. Tactically at that point, that's a different story. I think he fit in anywhere, because he's that type of player that ends up being such a difference maker when it comes to taking advantage of spaces, taking advantage of matchups, and being able to go towards goal. Any team that has some sort of quality. Now, if you talk about Southampton, or you're talking about something, he's not going to fit into a team like that. But if you start looking at the Bayern Munichs, if you start looking at the Real Madrids, or that ilk of team, yeah, he's going to fit in any of those clubs because of his abilities.
The disrespect, Juan. The disrespect.
Well, Juan, I want to thank you so much. It's always a pleasure listening to your takes and, of course, the manner in which you deliver them. Thank you so much. We'll talk again soon.
Likewise, Maria.
Southampton fans won't like you, Juan.
Huh?
Southampton fans won't like you. The disrespect.
That's okay. That's okay. I don't watch the championship that much anymore.
Oh my God.
Thanks. Break time now. It's break time. I need some water. Stay with SportsMax on YouTube and follow us on all social pages for updates, news, and entertainment.